What's up, everybody? Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Syracuse Sports. I will be your sports maitre d' for this edition, Brent Axe. Great to have you here, friends. And if you live in Syracuse, there are two things. Well, maybe we can add to this, but there are two things always happening: construction and basketball, right? That's the old joke. There's plenty of construction going on in Syracuse right now, and there's still plenty of basketball talk going on. Yeah, it's the middle of June, and we're talking Syracuse basketball. But our friends Mike Waters and Donna Ditota got terrific access with Syracuse head coach Adrian Autry. How a roster came together, both through the transfer portal and traditional means, including a late addition in recruiting that Syracuse got, and a big addition to the roster, quite literally. What was Syracuse's NIL strategy? What Adrian Autry has said about the style of play that Syracuse wants to play, the type of athletes they went after, how players like J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman are recovering from injury going into the offseason, which, again, doesn't really exist when it comes to Syracuse basketball. As much as people are fired up about football, and there was some news about that this week. I hope you can check out a story I wrote about how Syracuse football NIL got a $2 million infusion in about 10 minutes at an event earlier this week. And training camp will be here before you know it, and people are amped up about football. But this is an important year for Syracuse basketball, as we all know. This is a team that has gone in an unprecedented NCAA drought. They've got to make the tournament. I think Adrian Autry's job counts on it, and it feels like Syracuse has made some significant additions, not only through the portal, but as we mentioned, some freshmen. So maybe a little bit more of a focus on the portal guys and how Syracuse had the means to bring them in and why they targeted the players that they did, right from Syracuse head coach Adrian Autry. So if you haven't read Mike and Donna's stuff about that, I would encourage you to do that. Programming note on this front: Mike kind of had to not speak for Donna in a way, because Mike was in the same meeting as Donna with Coach Autry, but Donna wrote some great stuff about this, and I wanted to get her perspective on this. Unfortunately, we had a little technical issue when we were trying to record the pod, so Donna had to bow out, but I think Mike did a great job speaking for both Mike and Donna in this case, and the insight that they got from Syracuse head coach Adrian Autry. So that is coming up, but a couple of reminders for you folks. Yeah, it's June, but there's always something happening in Syracuse sports. And the best way to keep up, the best way to talk Syracuse sports with me, get your questions answered, what you want, people like me and Mike and Donna and Chris Carlson and the great crew, Javon Edmonds and everybody covering Syracuse sports for you, to ask the players and coaches, just shoot me a text. Become a Syracuse Sports Insider to get all the latest inside analysis, opinion, latest breaking news. If we have breaking news, you get it first as a Syracuse Sports Insider. And it's just a great way to shoot the breeze, talk sports. You know, summer's coming, and if your mind starts to wander to something Syracuse sports-wise, what's that football team going to be like this year? Just shoot me a text. Shoot the breeze. Talk SU Sports. It's just $3.99 a month to have direct text message access to me anytime. And the cool thing is, you could try it free for 2 weeks, see what it's all about, and join our growing community of Syracuse Sports Insiders, who, by the way, get an exclusive voice on this podcast. Only our Syracuse Sports Insiders get their voices heard here. We do not read comments from social media or anywhere else. You guys get it exclusively. Would love for you to come hang and be a part of our Syracuse Sports Insider community, even in the middle of summer. There's always something going on. Other thing I wanted to mention is we love featuring your original music here on Syracuse Sports. We've been doing that here on the pods, got that ramped up again after a while, and it's been great. You guys have been keeping me certainly occupied and keeping the head bobbing with the music that's been coming in, and thrilled to feature another artist today, my guy Brian Curtis. So Brian got in touch with me, and he had sent me some songs a while ago, and just one of those things that gets on the brain, and I'm like, I could have sworn we played his songs on this pod, and maybe I'll go back and find them, but why not feature Brian maybe again, maybe for the first time, because he's somebody that you should hear. And this is a song that Brian, he sent me a couple of songs, by the way, so I'll have to get to Salty another time on the pod, but this is a song called What I Do. You can find Brian, all the information or where you can get his music is in the show notes. So let's listen to a little bit of his song, What I Do, here. Then we'll listen to Mike Waters, and then we'll play Brian's song, and we can do this for you as well in your original music. We'll play the entire song at the end of the podcast. So get in touch. All the information in the show notes on how you can have your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports. All right, Mike, it's June 10th. So ever present on everybody's mind, of course, is Syracuse basketball, as it always is, 12 months out of the year in Syracuse. But it is because you and Donna Ditota, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, she was having some technical issues. So go read Donna's stuff about this, because Mike and Donna got to hang in Adrian Autry's office, and you guys had a conversation about a number of things, putting the roster together in the offseason, name, image, and likeness, the style of play that Syracuse wants to have going forward. So I wanted to get your perspective on those conversations, just kind of where Syracuse is at now, and that taking a breath between putting the roster together. They added some players as recently as I think it was last week, right? When they added the latest big man to the roster, and summer workouts coming, and, everything happening before we know it. Let me start with NIL, Mike. You talked to Autry about that. And what I was struck by in that conversation is that he admitted basically, there were probably some players last year that Syracuse got outbid for, but he felt like maybe this year, not so much the case. They were in a stronger position there.
Yes. It seemed like Adrian was saying that he felt they were at least competitive in the transfer portal market this year. That, obviously they didn't have the budget still of some of the, the programs out of the SEC, maybe some Big Ten schools and some ACC competitors, have very large NIL budgets, but the gap was closed a little bit. And I think he also mentioned that they were better prepared for the portal this time around. The addition of Alex Klein did make a difference. There was a pointed effort in being ready for this. He said they rolled into the offseason. They were ready to go. And I think that helped him as well, because, when you still don't have as much money as some of the other big schools out there, you still have to be smart about what you're doing. And you have to have good evaluations of a player's ability, but also good valuations put on them. How much are they worth? How much do you have? And then they went out, and if you the simplest thing to do, and it might, in some instances, it might be a little wrong here, but I think in this case it holds up. You look at the transfers they brought in a year ago, and other than Eddie Lampkin, none of them were from Power 5 conferences. You're talking Delaware, Hofstra, Georgia State. And this year, the first few guys that came in from the portal are from UCLA, Oregon State, 2 from Georgia Tech, and 1 from Cincinnati. I'll remind folks out there, Cincinnati is a Big 12 school now. So, you're bringing in kids from bigger schools, larger conferences. They've got more experience at this level that the ACC plays at. It just stands to reason that they were more competitive and more prepared for the portal this year.
Mike, not only what Alex was able to focus on there, better prepared NIL-wise. You mentioned the big schools, but the other thing that struck me was most of the players they brought in were not one and dones. They were players with several years, multiple years, probably a better word to use, of eligibility. I would imagine that was a strategy too.
I think it might have been, if not an outright strategic point that they were doing, just being more comfortable in the player that they were bringing in. You like this guy enough to invest in him as a 2 or 3 year player here in the program. That it also shows that the roster that you had coming in, as soon as you got JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman to return, you've locked in 2 starters. And then the first 3 guys that got out of the portal, I think, look like the rest of your starting lineup, with William Kyle from UCLA, Nate Kings from Oregon State, and Nate George of Georgia Tech. And now you're filling in. You may not be able to find a guy with only one more year of eligibility to join the roster after that point. So you bring in guys who have multiple years, and they're going to buy into the vision that you have, where you see them in the program. Okay, I'm going to be okay in this role for year one, and then maybe I'm moving into a starter's role after that. So both player and SU coaching staff, I think, were of like mind in some of these kids coming here. Kids like Tyler Betsy, Ibrahim Soare, right? Just probably the two best examples in the portal.
Longer, more athletic players, which is something they focused on as well, which we'll talk about in a second here, Mike. But I was struck by something Adrian told you and Donna as well, in that when they sat down with JJ and Donnie Freeman, so JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman, they were the anchors of this thing. They were the ones they had to get to come back, commit, the big names. And when they committed pretty much at the same time, right? And it was a real message of what Syracuse was prioritizing and who they wanted back and why. And they sat those two down and said, we're building around you two. And I was intrigued by Autry and the coaching staff use some NBA examples. These are the types of players we're going to go get to build around you. Did they happen to mention some of the players they showed, JJ and Donnie in that case, of examples of players they wanted to bring in here?
I don't remember a specific example of players they showed JJ and Donnie, except one stands out. I can't remember whether they showed this to JJ and Donnie or whether they showed it to the kid himself who they were looking to recruit, but it was with William Kyle. And they talked about centers, NBA centers like Robert Williams, used to be of the Boston Celtics. I believe he's in Portland now. I'm not sure. It's hard to keep up on the NBA when you're focused entirely on college basketball. But I do remember his time at Boston with the Celtics. Guys like that. And Mitchell Robinson for the New York Knicks. Not exactly guys who are going to demand the ball, who, their strength isn't dump it inside and let him, bully his way for a basket. It's like guys that are going to come out and set screens. They're going to be good in the pick and roll. They're going to be effective defensively. They especially talked about William Kyle from UCLA, that he could be the guy that really enables them to play defense the way they want to play. Active, be aggressive, bouncy, athletic guys. A guy who can switch. Last year they got hurt so many times on screens and pick and rolls with your centers, especially with Eddie Lampkin and Naheem McLeod. If you got switched, if Eddie's out there on an island, he's in trouble. But William Kyle, can handle that switch, and that's what they want to be able to do. Ibrahim Soare, Adrian emphasized a couple times because at 6'9" and whatever he weighs, you're thinking, is he really a center or is he more of a power forward? And Adrian repeated, he's a 5. He's a center. He's a center. He's a center.
Okay.
All right. So he's a center, but then Adrian adds this, but he can guard a 4 and he can even guard a 3 if need be. So again, you're looking at that defensive versatility there. And I think that's what they were showing the kids they were bringing in. I think it's easier to use NBA examples on these kids. They're familiar with the NBA. They want to be compared to those NBA guys. I think it's easier to wrap their head around. They can really see the scheme. It's easier to show them that than it is to show them another college team.
Mike, when we're sipping that sweet off-season Kool-Aid, everybody gets encouraged by some things that they see in here, right? But I got to admit, even I got a little jump when I saw this and said, yes, please. And that is that now in theory here, this team wants to move faster. This is an article that Donna wrote that came out on Tuesday that people should check out. It says, Adrian Autry wanted fast athletic players. Can they return Syracuse to transition basketball? And I just saw that headline and I'm like, yes, please. Right. And not just thinking back to we all have romantic thoughts about the Syracuse basketball in the 80s and 90s. And, that's my team. You hear people say that all the time. That's Syracuse basketball to me when they'd run up and down the floor. Oh, that's Sherman Douglas. Right. I get the romanticism of that. I just want to see basketball played like that. But here's the key to that, Mike. And as Donna pointed out in the story really well, transition comes from defense. You can say all you want. We're going to move fast. We're going to push the basketball. But you got to have defense to do it. And the shot blocking and steal numbers, Let's just say they're in a territory Syracuse cannot be in if they want to push the ball more. So do you think the players that they assembled here fit a roster? Frankly, some of those numbers, there's nowhere to go but up. But do you feel like they're addressing the key ingredient to transition, and that's defense?
I think there definitely is an emphasis on trying to do that. You got to get better. And you're like you said, you can't get worse. It'd be really hard to get worse. So yeah, you're going to get a little better. I think they want to get a lot better at that. I don't know if they've achieved that or not, but it was the goal. Adrian talked about that. It's harder if you can't run as much as you did back in the glory days of Sherman and Billy and Derek Coleman and all those guys. Because the difference now is teams are so much better at getting back on defense.
Yes.
Teams get back. Coaches tell them to get back. Coaches emphasize. There's so many coaches out there who they earn their keep by making sure their teams play really good on defense. It's hard just to like grab a defensive rebound and start a fast break. The team's already got everybody back. So and you're not going to outrun people. It's not a track meet. So you're not going to beat somebody down just because you're faster. Fast breaks come off the steals and block shots, and usually steals. And last year, Syracuse was, as you mentioned, they were down at the bottom of the ACC. They were really, really low nationally in both steals and blocks.
Here it is right here.
Our numbers. You're going to hit me with some numbers?
I'm going to hit you with some numbers.
Go ahead.
Guys, when we say they were low in those two categories, whatever you think the number is, it's probably, depending on how you look at it, lower or higher. Syracuse was 347th in steal percentage and 313th in block percentage, according to Ken Pop.
Yeah.
You're not going to create transition when you're that low in those two categories.
Yeah. And last year, listen, Eddie was great in what he was good at. His strength was, using his size and his bulk for rebounds and scoring in the low post. He was not a rim protector type guy. So he doesn't block a lot of shots. We knew that when he was coming in. We talked about that. But then when Donnie Freeman gets hurt, now you don't even have that power forward coming over and getting help side blocks. And it's Jair Davis, who's 3 inches shorter than Donnie and not as bouncy. So now both your 4 and your 5, neither one's a shot blocker. And now you're going to get a healthy Donnie Freeman back, and William Kyle is the antithesis of an Eddie Lampkin. He's not going to score as much for you, but you're hoping that he can be a little bit more athletic than Eddie and bouncy and be that rim protector. He might also score a few lob dunks off a couple pick and rolls. He might be a fan favorite if he just scores 4 points off 2 dunks off of lobs and blocks 2 shots a game. 2 dunks, 2 block shots, William Kyle, fan favorite.
But that creates not only momentum in the crowd, but on the court, right? And if the word popped in my head too, it's funny you said it, bouncy. I was thinking that exact term. Like you need a bouncy guy in there that can, bounce around like a ping pong ball, if you will, and get things going up and down the court either way.
Think about some of those,
the
centers at Houston last year. The Syracuse coaches were using some NBA comps, Robert Williams and who all else. But those Houston centers last year, Joseph Tugler and a couple of their other kids, they weren't 6'11", 7-footers. They're 6'9" and athletic, but strong as well. And they did great in there. They were they protected the rim. That's sort of, you can see, I think that was sort of the blueprint here that Syracuse was looking at. And when they bring in guys like Soiree and William Kyle.
Mike, and Donna wrote this piece as well, but you were there, Mike. When Autry was just going through the players, particularly the transfers that they brought in and kind of going over their stats and numbers and trends and why they targeted them.
Yeah.
What stood out to you when he was going through those players?
He seemed really high on Nate George, the point guard out of Georgia Tech. Just when you're talking about a Nate George, you're talking about a guy who has played 2 years in the ACC and last year leads the ACC in assists. As compared to last year, Jaquan Carlos comes from Hofstra. He hadn't played at that level at all 4 years of his college career at Hofstra. Again, great kid. And I don't even know if when they first got him, if they really had it in mind that he was supposed to be the starting point guard. I think it just turned out that way. But so he's the starter. But Nate George is 4 to 5 inches taller than Jaquan Carlos. A real point guard, though. When you're leading the ACC in assists, you show you're a distributor. So I think he helps them on both ends of the floor, because if you're, again, to get steals, sometimes you get the little pesky guy, who gets a lot of steals. My mind always goes back to John Linehan of those Providence teams of about 25 years ago. Yeah, he's a great defender. He bothered everybody in the Big East. But more often than not, steals are from getting your hands in the passing lanes and being long and active with your hands. And Nate George at 6'3", 6'4", gives you that at the point. So, we'll have to see. And, the other thing that stood out was Nate Kings. We look at him as coming from Oregon State and a guy that shot 44% from 3-point range last year. And we're like, shooter. He's a shooter. He's a 44% shooter. And Adrian Autry talked about his defense. They saying that even talking to Stevie Thompson, the former Syracuse star, who's an assistant at Oregon State. And, the word from Stevie was they really thought he was going to be their best defender. Now, he was coming off a knee injury last year, so maybe he wasn't completely back. But Oregon State, when they first got him, thought he was going to be a primary shutdown defender. And I think that's what the Syracuse coaches hope they got too. So he's not just a shooter.
Mike didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to pop quiz you here, Mike. Oh, man. And I'm going to answer at the same time. Don't worry.
You do this every time.
I know this. Come on. What else would you expect? But I'm going to take the pop quiz too. All right. So I would have.
You know what the questions are. It's not a pop quiz to you.
Fair, but
okay.
I think you'll like this. I think you'll like this. Mike's he's like the kid that walked into class like, oh my God, I didn't study for this. You're gonna be, trust me, you'll be fine. On the count of 3, we're both going to say who we feel is the most important addition to the Syracuse roster.
Ooh, addition.
And I'm going to qualify this. This could be a freshman or a transfer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 3, 2, 1. Nate George. Oh, see, there you go. Just hearing you talk about Nate made me think of that question, Mike, because they just need a point guard. And look, nothing against Carlos. He did what he could. But when he got a taller guard who led the ACC in assists, been there, done that, it was a huge statement right off the bat for Syracuse to target a player like that, get a player like that. It just means a lot to have a point guard with some chops coming in. And to hear how Nate talked about why he wanted to come to Syracuse, what they told him about, like basically, here are the keys to this team, and you could be the guy that leads us back to the tournament, and how I feel like he's embraced that. Nothing against anybody else they brought in, because there's some talented players here, and everybody's certainly excited about the freshmen coming in too. Mm-hmm. But I think Nate George was the one that made you feel like they did take before seeing a minute of basketball played, of course, but you need to drink that offseason Kool-Aid, right? And make you feel like something is happening, progress is happening. Nate George was the guy that made me feel that way more than almost anybody they brought in. Yeah,
I always put a heavy emphasis on the point guard position. Always have. It's just my thing. When you go to college and you cover North Carolina teams with Kenny Smith, and then you come to Syracuse and you cover teams with Sherman Douglas and Michael Carter Williams and a few guys who could play the point, you realize, I think that guy that has the ball a lot is important.
Yes.
The other thing too with Nate George, he didn't take an official visit to Syracuse. William Kyle came for a visit. Of course, he's a Nebraska kid, not used to this part of the country. He comes on a visit before he commits. Nate Kings from Oregon State, he came on a visit before he did. Nate George didn't come on a visit. Now, he's originally from Toronto. He's been in the ACC. He's played at the Dome. But he did do a Zoom with Syracuse, along with 2 other schools, Oklahoma and North Carolina. You're swimming in some waters with some other, big fish there. And you got him. I think that maybe going back to the beginning of our conversation with, Was Syracuse better funded this year? I think so. Was Syracuse better prepared this year? I think so. And I think this, what we were just talking about it. Listen, if Oklahoma and North Carolina are interested in a point guard from Georgia Tech and you get him, I think he's probably your most important addition.
Zoom still matters in 2025. That's good to see.
They
good.
do.
I thought its importance was fading since the pandemic, but you still got to work that magic on Zoom, and good on the SU coaches for that. We've talked about a lot of new faces, Mike. I want to get into a familiar face here. You have an article up on syracuse.com now that people should check out about JJ Starling. And, the further away you get from the season, the more reflective you are. And I think the more honest you can get about some things. And tell us about how JJ was a little honest about his injury, how it affected his play, and just what he's doing here in the offseason to come in strong, ready to go. And as we talked about earlier in the pod, like, they really put on, to use a basketball term, the full court press to JJ and Donnie, saying, you will anchor this thing. And it was important for JJ, the hometown kid, the whole thing, to come back and be that guy.
Yeah, JJ's season last year was interesting. In addition to missing those 7 games in the month of December with the injury to his left wrist, breaking a bone in it, he ranked 6th in the ACC in scoring at almost 18 points a game. And normally you'd be like, wow, 18 points a game, great season. But his shooting percentages were off. He struggled to shoot the ball, especially from 3-point range. I think, for the season, he was down around 27% from 3. But when I was watching him last season, I was just always like wondering, the shot doesn't look right to me. And I don't know whether he just got out of rhythm while sitting out the 7 games, or I was also always wondering if that left wrist, and I know it's not the shooting hand, but it's still important. That's the hand that guides the best. That's the hand that holds the ball. That's your guide hand. And I don't know. It's just, he never said anything about it during the season. And I got him on the phone a week ago, and for just a second, he said, yeah, it bothered me at times. That's all he would say, at times. But then he would quickly said, he's like, but everybody's body aches. Everybody's got hurts. It's a long season. And then he said, as far as the percentages go, hey, listen, when you're the focus of the other team's scouting report and you're number 1, and that was sort of an allusion to not having Donnie around anymore too, so he didn't have that second leading scorer, with him. So yeah, life got tough for JJ. There's a lot of reasons his shooting percentages went down after he came back from that injury. But I got to wonder if maybe the wrist wasn't just a little smidge of a part of it. And, talk with him about his shooting and his workouts this summer, and how he's being really, really focused on not just getting in the gym and taking like 1,000 shots. These guys that sometimes will report back to you and say, I took 500 shots a day. And he talked, which I loved hearing him say, it was more about the quality of the shot. I mean, and it's true. Is it better to take 500 shots on a given day for a workout, and if they weren't all good shots and or is it better to take 200 good shots, all of them the right way? And which one's better for you? Of course, it's the 200, everyone shooting it the right way. He said he's really, really focused on just honing down the shooting form, the stroke, and everything, and getting his shot back. And he reminded me of this. And I saw him in high school. He said, I know I can shoot. I want to get back to where I was in high school with that shot. And I remember seeing him all the way back when he was at Baker High School in Baldwinsville.
Same.
He shot it very, very well then. So
he did.
He's got to get back to that. And I think some of these additions are going to help him. Having a Nate George as your backcourt running mate, a Nate King's on the wing. And yeah, I know Lucas Taylor and Chris Bell both shot the ball pretty well by the end of the season last year, more than pretty well, very well. That was not the problem with both Lucas and Chris. They had other shortcomings. We'll see how that goes. But getting Donnie Freeman back, I mean, dear Lord. I mean, that's got to be something. I mean, and in fact, we talk about Nate George as the most important transfer and all that. We agreed on that. I got to wonder if Donnie Freeman might not be the most important player for this team, because I think he's got the potential to be very, very good.
I think it's a 1-1A situation. I guess it depends how you ask the question, because what I said was the most important addition. Yeah, Freeman is technically going to be an addition because He didn't spend enough time on the court last year to really get a sense of it. And he missed so much time, you almost forget he was on the team, right? He got hurt in December. And
early January, Florida State.
It was really genuine. I'm sorry. But it was enough of basically the entire ACC run.
Yep.
You just got in your head like, okay, yeah, I see him on the sideline there, but you almost forget like what kind of player Syracuse could have had on that court had he stayed healthy. We're going to get to see that now as opposed to the 2 months of the ACC season. You would have preferred to see it. Mike, before we let you go.
We don't know. The last 4 or 5 games, I forget which one it was, but like his last few games before he got hurt and missed the rest of the year. And these were without JJ, by the way. Donnie Freeman averaged 16 and 10.
He was starting to get it.
As a freshman, yeah, he was like, you could see, and he was taking on more of a load with JJ out. So I'm telling you, boy, if Donnie Freeman averages 16 and 10, I mean, that's first team all ACC. Well,
and you just hit on a great point. The anchors of coming back were JJ and Donnie, and they barely crossed paths on that team last year. With the injuries,
I think they played 6 or 7
injuries.
games together. Total.
That's it. Yeah. Based on what the timing of their injuries, they're getting to know each other's games coming into the season, even though they were on the same team technically all last year. All right. Speaking of pop quizzes, Mike, you can grab your red pen and grade me on this because it's the first time I'm pronouncing it out loud. And we'll close on this thought. We've talked about pretty much everybody that Syracuse has brought in on other pods, and certainly you and Donna have done a good job covering this. But one guy we have not talked about is Chefing Diawara.
Chefing.
Oh, chefing.
Yeah, like a chef. Like I mean, our headline writers are waiting for the day when he makes a game-winning basket, and the headline will be, yes, chef.
As a avid viewer of The Bear, I'm all over that. I'm just waiting.
I knew you would get that.
Absolutely waiting. So chefing comes in. I like that. That's a fun name to say. And there's one thing about him, Mike. That is a rather large human that Syracuse is bringing in here. And
so he comes out of an academy out in Wisconsin where he spent the past year out there. But before that, he spent 4 or 5 years in Europe. Playing, the club ball level over there. He's a native of Mali, which is the West African country homeland of Barama Sidibe, who turned into quite a fine center during his time here at Syracuse. Chefing's a little bit different than Barama, though, at least, as he first steps on campus. He is a legit 6'11", maybe 7 feet tall. We'll go with 6'11" for now, because I don't want to exaggerate anything on here. But a legit 240 pounder. So he, like you said, he's a big human. And probably a little bit of a project. Offensively, he's raw, but he's very mobile for a guy his size. And I think that was important to the Syracuse coaches because, again, we go back to the way they want to play and everything. So we're saying, these 6'9" athletic centers will work. Well, then what are they doing, recruiting a 6'11", 240-pound guy? Well, sometimes it's nice to have a different, look every once in a while. You might run into a big guy, and you need it. But in addition to that, he's supposed to be very, very mobile. So he moves, he can move his feet. We'll see if that's true. Obviously, I would imagine the speed of the college game is going to be a problem for him right away. Things are going to move fast, and he's a big kid. But, he's learned the game from good coaches in good situations, both in Europe and at the academy in Wisconsin. His coach out there at the academy had previously coached himself in Europe. So I think that was a part of a connection why the kid ended up there. But, he comes in and there's no pressure either. You've got William Kyle, you've got Ibrahim Soiree. So you're not going to throw this kid into the fire too soon unless he shows you, hey, you know what? He can handle a few minutes a game if we need him to go up against a really big 5. And we'll see how that goes. But, it's interesting in this era of people leaving early, either for the NBA or the transfer portal and everything. The Syracuse coaches are bringing in guys with multiple years of eligibility, whether it's through the portal or what is now a 5-player incoming freshman class. That's not normal. A lot of coaches, say they don't want to worry about high school recruits anymore. They're just going to worry about the portal and stay old. But It looks like in some of these cases, the Syracuse coaches are willing to still take a chance on the fact that a kid might stick around long enough to develop.
There's still talent there to be found. And like, I think Rick Pitino said it this offseason, we're not even bothering with high school recruits, but come on,
He still brought in a couple.
Exactly. They're still out there. You're still going to find some guys, and Kyan Anthony and a Sadiq White are out there. You're going to bring them in, even though they're freshmen in the traditional sense. Well, Mike, hopefully we get a little bit of a summer here. It feels like there's been a lot of developments basketball wise and the constant stirring of news. And of course, they love summer workouts and things tend to pop up a little bit, but I hope you enjoy the, who knows what kind of summer we'll get here in Syracuse. It's been very wet up to this point. Maybe we'll get some sunny days and some golf in there, but before you know it, it'll be hoop season again. And you guys can say, as they listen to this pod, that we had you covered in the middle of June about what was happening Syracuse basketball wise. But thank you, Mike, for your time and your insight. We thank Donna as well. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it work technologically to have her on the pod today, but please go read her stuff on all this, as well as Mike and Donna had some great access to Adrian Autry, and he gave some great perspective on everything we talked about here. And we appreciate you guys doing that and coming on the pod today, my friend.
Always good talking to you, Brent. Thanks a lot. We'll see you.
Thanks again to Mike Waters for joining us here. It is always basketball season, and I was particularly intrigued by some things that Adrian Autry said in those great articles that Mike and Donna wrote about just kind of the state of Syracuse basketball right now and the busy offseason that they had. The thing I am most intrigued by, and Mike and I talked about it a little bit, is getting back to transition basketball. We know we're not getting back to the 90s. We're not getting back to the Sherman Douglas, Billy Owens days, although that would be nice. But that's the kind of basketball you want to see. The slow down, use the shot clock type of basketball that Syracuse kind of found itself a lot in. And look, you get injuries. Sometimes you intend to play faster. You intend to go deeper on the bench. You intend to be more versatile in how you play. And then J.J. Stromley gets hurt. And then Donnie Freeman gets hurt. And things change, and you have to adjust based on who your roster is. I get that. But the overall general philosophy of Syracuse basketball at its best, no matter who the players on the team are, play fast, transition, up and down the court basketball. That's what people want to see. Frankly, given the nature of the product that Syracuse has put out the last couple of years, they're coming off a 14-19 losing season and an extended NCAA tournament drought, one of the longest in program histories, one of the longest in program history, I should say. You better be entertaining. You better be a team and a style of play that people want to watch. So I think Adrian Autry is on to the right thing there in terms of what's best for the talent on the roster, but also what's best for people to watch your team play, sell some tickets, and be invested in how you play. Not only how you play in terms of what your record is, but are you fun to watch? Are you a team I want to sit down and watch, even if maybe you're up against it talent-wise, or you may be overmatched against a Duke or a North Carolina or a team like that? Are you fun to watch, right? This is entertainment we're talking about here. So we're also in June, and the Kool-Aid is flowing. So hopefully he will stick to what he was saying about that and the style of play. And as Mike and I talked about, you need defense to create transition. The answers to all those questions, though, still months and weeks away, but it was great to talk some hoops here with Mike today. It's great to hear from Brian Curtis, our featured original artist today. If you want your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports, all the information in the show notes on how you can get in touch and have your original music. And by your, I mean if you're a individual artist like Brian, if you're in a band. It's great when we get bands and artists that have Syracuse roots and certainly are Syracuse fans. It's probably why they're listening to this pod. But you do not have to be a local artist. You can be from anywhere. We will be happy to feature your original music here on Syracuse Sports. Thanks for everybody that sent in the tunes, but keep them coming, and we'd love to highlight them for you here on the pod. So let's take a listen to Brian Curtis and his song, What I Do, to take us out here. And thanks for listening to this episode and checking out this episode of Syracuse Sports. I would encourage you to subscribe or follow wherever you get your pods. If that's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you prefer to get your podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of Syracuse Sports. Chris Carlson and I, and a pod coming out a little later this week, we're going to get some insight from our Syracuse Sports Insiders too, as always. everything you need to know about the House settlement and how it affects Syracuse sports. I've been taking a few days to kind of take this all in, absorb it. What does it mean? What has Syracuse committed to? What do we not know about what Syracuse may or may not commit to in terms of money being spent, roster limits, and all the things that came from the House settlement that came out very late on a Friday night. And it's one of the most significant stories in the history of college sports, right? So no matter when we got the news that the settlement had come in, it is going to have a monstrous effect on, and that might be one of the first questions that I talk about with Chris in the pod coming up later this week. Do we still cover college sports? We'll discuss that in the next episode of Syracuse Sports. So make sure you're subscribed and you will get that as soon as it's available to you. We thank you for listening to this episode, though. We'll catch you next time, guys. Once again, here's Brian Curtis and What I Do.